Mara walked alone beneath a cathedral of towering pines, each step pressing softly into soil rich with moss and memory. The forest breathed around her, alive with distant birdsong and the rustling whisper of unseen creatures, as if every root and branch recognized her presence and leaned closer to listen. She had left behind the hum of towns and the weight of human voices, seeking only silence and something like belonging, something she had not felt in years. Her boots were worn, her clothes patched in places where thorns and travel had torn through, and though her body ached, her heart carried a deeper exhaustion built from long nights without sleep and days filled with faces that passed by. Without seeing her, she moved with the careful slowness of someone who had learned to survive by watching and waiting, instead of rushing toward danger. The light filtered through the canopy in soft gold, shifting like water across her path, and Mara paused often to breathe in the scent of pine, resin, and damp earth, as though the very air could fill the hollow places inside her. She followed. No map, only instinct, letting her feet choose direction, while her mind drifted to forgotten corners of memory, moments when she once felt safe, laughter around a fire, arms holding her in warmth before everything fractured and she chose to leave rather than break. Entirely, the world beyond the trees had grown loud, sharp, unkind, but here in the forest, her heartbeat found a calmer rhythm like a drum. Fading into the distance, she traveled deeper still, knowing that few humans dared wander this far into wilderness, and feeling a strange pull as though the woods called her name. With every rustle of windars passed in gentle silence, yet never dull. Every fallen leaf held a story, every shifting beam of light changed the tone of the world around her. Shadows lengthened, and the evening air cooled, brushing her skin like the touch of a forgotten friend. Mara welcomed it all, the solitude, the uncertainty, the way each sound sharpened her senses instead of dulling them. She felt alive, more alive than she ever had among cities and noise. She did not yet know what waited ahead or how the forest would test her heart before morning, but she walked on, unaware that fate inhaled behind her like a predator preparing to step forward and change everything she believed. She was simply passing through, yet the wild had already chosen her. The forest held its breath as Mara continued onward, until a sound unlike any she had heard that day brushed the edge of her awareness, a thin, weak whimper, hardly more than a sigh, yet full of need, as if a tiny heartbeat called out to her through the undergrowth. She stopped mid-step, senses sharp, eyes scanning shadows for movement. There beneath a tangle of roots, twisted like ancient fingers, lay 3 wolf cubs, barely weeks old, their fur clumped with mud, their bodies trembling from cold and hunger. They looked up at her with glassy eyes, wide and unfocused, small voices rising again in desperate plea. Mara felt something inside her chest shift, like a locked door slowly opening. She knew the laws of wilderness and how nature allowed no softness for the weak, yet her feet moved on, their own drawn closer until she knelt beside them. She reached out with gentle, cautious hands, expecting fear, expecting teeth or frantic clawing, yet the cubs only pressed into her warmth, tiny noses brushing her palms as if they recognized something kind in her scent. Mara lifted them one by one, cradling them to her chest, their frail bodies light as fallen feathers. She could feel ribs beneath fur like fragile bone combs. The forest watched, silent and still, as though trees leaned inward, waiting to see what she would choose. She had no plan, no supplies for feeding young predators, no promise that this choice would not lead her into danger, yet she gathered them close and rose slowly, holding life against her heartbeat like a vow she did not speak out loud. Rain clouds rolled above, thick and heavy, darkening the sky with bruised purple, and silver winds stirred leaves into frantic shivers. The air carried a sense of looming change. Mara tucked the cubs beneath her coat, their small bodies warming against her. She did not know where their mother was or why they had been left alone, but she could not abandon them. The decision settled deep like roots gripping earth, the path ahead uncertain, fragile and wild, as the tiny hearts pulsing beneath her hands. Storm clouds swallowed the last of the light as Mara searched for shelter, each breath visible in cooling air. The forest that had felt calm now thrummed with restless energy. Wind howled through the trees like warning or lament. She found a fallen trunk split by lightning long ago, its hollow interior just large enough to shield her and the cubs from rain. She crawled inside, careful not to jostle their fragile forms, the scent of damp bark and old rot filling her lungs. Thunder cracked overhead, a sound like mountains breaking, and the cubs flinched, tiny bodies pressing closer, trembling with fear and exhaustion. Mara wrapped her coat tighter around them, whispering calm with the quiet rhythm of her heartbeat. She stroked their fur, slow, steady as rain began to fall, in heavy sheets, drumming against the wood like 1,000 impatient fists. Lightning flashed in sharp white lines across the sky, illuminating trees like bones, stretching toward heaven. The downpour seeped through seams of the trunk, cold trickles across Mara's shoulders, yet she did not move. She watched the cubs sleep their breaths. Small, fragile, but alive, their trust in her await, and a gift. Survival out here was never guaranteed, and she felt the truth of it settle into her bones. She could leave them, she could walk away into the storm. With no bond, no burden, but she did not. Her body curled around them instinctively, as if she had always belonged to the wild, as if these cubs had been waiting for her. The forest outside raged, but within the hollow, a soft warmth grew like a flame no larger than hope, a beginning she did not yet understand. Far beyond the crack of thunder, the wolf pack returned to their den, expecting safety, warmth, and familiar scent, but instead they found emptiness, cold earth. Where bodies should have been, the alpha stopped first, nose to the ground, breath drawing in the truth. Like smoke, growls rippled through the pack, low, deep, vibrating with panic and rising fury. The scent of human clung to the soil, sharp, unmistakable, and fresh wolves paced, restless jaws, parted ears pinned back in confusion and rage. The alpha lifted its head skyward with a howl that trembled through the forest like a blade, slicing the night wind. Carried that cry for miles, stirring branches, bending shadows, alerting every creature that something had been taken from them, something no pack would ever surrender without blood. Rain slicked their fur, shining silver beneath flickering sky as they spread out in formation, every paw carefully placed, following the trail like a thread pulling them through darkness. They moved, silent and precise, hunger, not for food but for vengeance. The alpha led with eyes bright as embers, unwavering in purpose, each wolf close behind, hearts pounding with one mind, one mission, no mercy, no hesitation. The forest itself seemed to draw back as they passed, sensing the storm of teeth and fury driving forward toward the one who held their young, never knowing mercy waited in stillness ahead. The storm softened to steady rain, but the forest remained sharp with tension, each drop tapping leaves like distant footsteps. As Mara carried the cubs through mud and shadow, she sought dry ground, hoping to find higher shelter before night deepened. Yet something in the air felt different, a prickle across her skin, like unseen eyes watching her. She could not know the pack was closing in, swift and silent, following her trail with the certainty of blood and instinct. Their paws stirred, no sound, only purpose, carved into their movements, as though the earth cleared a path for vengeance to stride through the trees. Mara reached a small clearing where moonlight broke through tattered clouds, casting pale light over slick bark and trembling branches. She laid her coat across the driest patch she could find, placing the cubs gently upon it, their tiny bodies curled like fallen leaves. Breathing soft and even, she knelt beside them, brushing mud from their fur, unaware that beyond the tree-lined shadows shifted with living threat, glowing eyes watching, waiting, testing the edge of courage. The wolves gathered at the dark perimeter, muscles taut like drawn bowstrings. The alpha stood at the front, head low, eyes burning with fury that thunder had never matched. One silent command held them back for now, a heartbeat away from violence, as the forest hushed to witness what would come next. The moment broke like thin ice beneath weight. The clearing still held its quiet silver glow, but behind the veil of trees shapes emerged, first shadows, then fur, then eyes gleaming like shards of winter. Mara did not hear them at first, to focused on drying the cubs with gentle hands, too tired to sense the storm of muscle and teeth gathering around her. Breath by breath the wolves stepped forward, paws sinking silently into damp earth, rain dripping from their coats like beads of steel. The pack formed a crescent around her, a living barrier of instinct and threat. No sound, no growl, only the pounding of their hearts like drums in the bones of the night. Then the cubs stirred, tiny whimpers rising from their sleep, and one stretched little paw brushing Mara's chest as if claiming her with dream-soft trust. The wolves froze as though lightning had pinned them in place. Fangs glinted beneath curled lips, but none moved, none leaped, none tore through flesh, as instinct demanded. Rage trembled beneath fur, but confusion held them captive, and in that breath of hesitation, something shifted in the air. The alpha stepped forward, massive frame slicing the moonlight with power and purpose, its eyes locked on the cubs, not the human. Its ears twitched, head tilted ever so slightly, torn between violence and disbelief. Mara sensed movement and lifted her gaze slowly, and what she saw stole her breath. Wolves surrounding her, like shadows made of rage. The alpha, so close she could see scars across its muzzle. Breath cloud the air between them, mere inches from her trembling hands. Yet she did not scream, she did not run. Instead, she stayed perfectly still. Fear coiled within her spine, but layered beneath it something softer, an understanding that she was alive only because the cubs slept peacefully across her chest, like fragile bridges between two worlds. The alpha lowered its head, sniffing the cub's scent, mingled with Mara's. The pack leaned forward, muscles tense, the world narrowed. To that single moment, every raindrop, every heartbeat, every silent breath pressing around them. Then the smallest cub lifted its head, nuzzling into Mara with innocent trust, and the entire pack hesitated, eyes widening, as if struck by ancient memory or forgotten instinct. She had become shelter, warmth, life protector, not threat, and the forest held its breath again, waiting to see whether blood or mercy would define the night. The alpha stepped closer, each movement deliberate, measured the muscles beneath its fur, coiled like steel springs, every claw pressing into soft earth, yet none lashed out, its eyes never leaving the cubs that slept so fragile against Mara's chest. The rest of the pack shifted behind it, a wave of living tension ready to explode with a single command, yet restrained by something older, deeper than hunger or anger, something they did not fully understand. Mara remained perfectly still, her own heart drumming loud enough to echo in her ears, every instinct screaming to flee, but a deeper voice whispered, "Stay, trust, survive." Rain dripped from leaves onto her shoulders, cold and wet, but she did not move. Her hands hovered lightly over the cubs, brushing fur with care, murmuring in soft tones. She did not know if they could hear yet. It was the only sound to break the charged silence. The alpha lowered its massive head until their noses almost touched the cubs, sniffing every tiny limb, every pulse of life between breaths. Mara felt the weight of the stare, yet something in it softened curiosity, mingling with caution and respect for her courage and restraint. The pack shifted as one, the tension vibrating through the clearing, as if the earth itself held its breath. The alpha lifted its head slowly, eyes sweeping over Mara, not with rage but calculation and acceptance. Something unspoken passed between them, a silent agreement forged in the hush of rain and shadow that violence would not claim the night, that the cubs would be returned unhurt, and that she had earned their pause. A fragile truce born of instinct, trust, and the fragile warmth of life held carefully in her arms. Mara opened her eyes slowly, the cubs rising and falling against her chest, a rhythm soft and steady. She could feel the pulse of life within them, and the pulse of the forest around her. She did not move, waiting for the alpha to decide for them all. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, leaves dripping quietly onto the ground, and the moonlight now filtered through clouds, painting pale silver across the scene. The alpha remained at the forefront, its massive body a shadow of power and restraint, eyes locked on Mara, gauging every heartbeat, every breath. She did not flinch, she did not speak, only met the gaze of the creature that could destroy her in an instant, yet chose not to. The cubs stirred a tiny paw, brushing her collarbone, a reminder that they trusted her completely, and that she was now bound to them by more than fear. The pack shifted behind, the alpha muscles tense but restrained, each wolf watching Mara and the cubs carefully. The air held a fragile silence, as if even the forest waited to see what would happen next. Mara breathed slowly, counting each breath, letting calm settle through her veins. The alpha lowered its head slightly, a subtle gesture signaling the others to hold back, a quiet command that rippled through the pack like water over stone. They did not advance, they did not snarl, they only watched the human who had cradled their young in her arms, as if her courage and care had earned their reluctant respect. Mara stayed still, rooted in place, a bridge between wild and human, a keeper of fragile life. Finally the alpha stepped back, a fraction signaling understanding and control. The pack relaxed slightly, muscles easing, yet never losing alertness. Mara rose slowly, carrying the cubs with careful grace, each movement deliberate and respectful. The wolves followed her with cautious eyes. The night held them in a suspended moment of trust, a promise, unspoken yet understood, that she would not harm their young, and they would not harm her. The clearing seemed to exhale, and the forest absorbed the quiet truce, born of instinct and tenderness. The alpha lowered its head, completely signaling the end of the moment. Tension eased through the pack muscles, relaxing, eyes softening yet still watchful. Mara stood slowly, the cubs safe in her arms, a warmth settling through her chest. She felt the weight of life she had protected, and the weight of trust she had earned. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, No wind, no rustle, just the quiet pulse of earth and rain and life. The pack shifted back into the shadows but remained near enough to watch and guard silently, a living barrier of respect and instinct that had chosen mercy over fear. Orimara took careful steps toward the edge of the clearing, every motion, deliberate, every breath, measured the cubs nestled against her chest, nuzzling and stretching, as if sensing safety they were hers to carry for now, yet not hers to keep fully. The alpha followed at a distance, its gaze never leaving them, a silent promise that the bond between human and forest would remain unbroken as long as care and trust were honored. The night air cooled her skin, but warmed her heart as she moved slowly, leaving the clearing behind her, the cubs safe. The pack watching from the edge of shadow, the forest seemed to pulse around them, a quiet witness to the fragile truce. Born that night, Mara understood that she had crossed the line into something older, wilder, a place where fear met mercy, and where life could be protected even against the laws of instinct. She walked on carefully, each step carrying not only the cubs, but the weight of a story that would live in silence between human and pack forever.